Level 1. The New Worker. You do not enter the EV battery factory through a shining front lobby. You enter through the loading side where the morning air smells faintly of cold metal, cardboard, plastic wrap, and machine oil. A badge hangs from your neck. Gloves are tight around your fingers. Safety shoes feel heavy on your feet. Somewhere beyond the sealed doors, machines are already running before you even understand what they do. Your first job is not to build a battery, your first job is to move things. Sealed containers, wrapped pallets, rolls of copper and aluminum foil. Boxes with warning labels, materials that look ordinary until your trainer stops beside one pallet and says, "Handle this carefully. One day part of this may sit inside an electric vehicle." You look at the container again. It does not look powerful, it does not look dangerous, it looks like warehouse cargo. But this is the bottom of the system. Before a battery cell is coated, dried, stacked, sealed, charged, tested, and shipped, someone like you has to scan the right label, move the right material, and place it in the right zone. The factory speaks in beeps, floor lines, flashing lights, and locked doors. Green means proceed. Red means stop. Yellow lines tell you where your body is allowed to stand. You are new, so every sound feels like a warning. Then your scanner flashes red. Wrong staging area. Your stomach tightens. It is a small mistake, caught early, but the message is clear. In this place, mistakes do not stay where they begin. They travel. They hide inside paperwork, machines, batches, and finished cells. You correct the pallet, scan again, and hear the green beep. For now, the system lets you move forward. But how far can you climb before this factory stops feeling like a workplace and starts feeling like a machine that runs through you? Level 2. The line operator. By your second level, you are no longer just moving materials around the edges of the factory. Now you stand beside the line. The machine in front of you does not care that you are still learning. It moves with the same rhythm every minute, every hour, every shift. Thin rolls of metal feed into the system. Coated sheets pass under rollers. Sensors blink. Motors hum. A screen above your station shows speed, temperature, tension, and warnings you are still learning to understand. Your job is to watch one small part of the process and keep it moving. At first that sounds easier than carrying pallets. You are not walking across the warehouse anymore. You are not pushing heavy loads through marked lanes. But after an hour you realize this job is harder in a different way. Your body is trapped in the rhythm of the machine. Your eyes must stay open. Your hands must react quickly. Your mind cannot drift. A small wrinkle in the material, a tiny bubble in the coating, a strange sound from the roller, a warning light that appears for only a second. These are the things you are told to catch before they grow into bigger problems. The line supervisor walks past and reminds you, do not wait until it looks serious. If something feels wrong, call it. But calling it has a cost. If you stop the line too early, people look at you like you are wasting time. If you wait too long, the defect may continue through hundreds of meters of material before anyone notices. The factory teaches you a new kind of fear. Not the fear of doing heavy work, but the fear of being too slow to recognize a mistake. The sound of the line gets into your head. The rollers spin. The conveyor pulls. The machine breathes in metal and slurry and breathes out something closer to a battery than anything you touched at level 1. You begin to understand that production is not one big action. It is thousands of small actions that must happen in the right order without hesitation. Then the line shudders. Just once. A small vibration runs through the frame near your station. The screen does not show a major alarm, but the sound is wrong. You lean closer, heart beating faster, trying to decide whether this is nothing or the beginning of something expensive. At level 1, your mistake could send material to the wrong place. At level 2, your hesitation could let the machine create the wrong product. So you raise your hand and call the supervisor. The line slows, people turn, and for the first time you feel what it means to interrupt the rhythm of a factory that never wants to stop. But once you learn how to keep up with the machine, they move you closer to the part where mistakes become expensive. Level 3, the Quality Control Inspector. At level 3, you step away from the constant pull of the line and into the bright white light of quality control. The room feels colder here, cleaner, quieter but not calmer. Instead of standing beside the machine, you stand beside the results of the machine. Sheets, samples, and unfinished cells pass in front of you under inspection lamps. Cameras scan surfaces, gauges measure thickness. Screens display numbers that seem harmless until you understand what they mean. Now, your job is not to keep the product moving. Your job is to decide whether it deserves to move forward. You inspect edges for rough cuts. You look for bubbles, scratches, dents, uneven coating, dust, and tiny defects that most people would never notice. You check readings, compare samples, and mark anything suspicious for review. The work is slower than the line, but the pressure is sharper. At level 2, you feared missing a problem while the machine was running. Here you fear approving a problem with your own eyes. The workers on the line want flow. The supervisors want output. The schedule wants speed. But quality control asks a different question. What is the cost of letting one bad cell continue? That question follows you all morning. A sample arrives with a faint mark near the edge. It is small, almost forgettable. The number on the screen is still close to the acceptable range. Around you, trays keep arriving. Reports keep waiting. People keep moving. You could pass it. Nobody might notice, but the longer you stare, the more uncomfortable you feel. In a battery factory, a defect does not need to look dramatic to matter. A tiny flaw can hide inside the cell, travel into a module, disappear inside a pack, and only reveal itself much later, when the factory is no longer around to see it. So you flag the sample. The line supervisor comes over. His face does not show anger, but you can feel the question behind his eyes. Is this really worth slowing us down? You show him the mark. You show him the reading. You explain what you see. For a moment, the room feels too quiet. Then he nods and calls for a hold on the batch. It is the first time your decision stops something larger than yourself. At level 1, you followed the system. At level 2, you tried to keep pace with the system. But now at level 3, you learn that quality means standing in front of the system and saying no. And once you learn how to stop a flawed product, the factory sends you to the people who must stop the machines themselves. Level 4. The Machine Technician. At level 4, the factory no longer sees you as someone who only watches the process. Now you are called when the process breaks. The first alarm comes in the middle of a shift, sharp and sudden, cutting through the steady hum of production. A warning light flashes near one of the coating stations. The line slows, then stops. The sound of moving material fades into an uncomfortable silence. That silence is heavier than noise. Workers step back from their stations. A supervisor checks the screen. Someone speaks into a radio. Then your name is called. You arrive with a tool bag in one hand and a diagnostic tablet in the other. The machine is taller than you remember from the operator side. Up close, it feels less like equipment and more like a giant metal animal with rollers, guards, cables, sensors, belts, and hidden parts that all depend on each other. Your job is to find the failure without creating another one. A sensor may be dirty, a roller may be misaligned, a belt may be worn, a cable may be loose. The problem could be simple, but the pressure around it is not. Every minute the line sits still, production falls behind. Every person standing there is waiting for your hands to make the factory breathe again. But rushing is dangerous. If you reset the machine without understanding the fault, the problem can return deeper in the process. If you tighten the wrong part, you can damage the material. If you ignore a warning because everyone wants the line moving, you may send bad product forward and force quality control to catch what you failed to prevent. You kneel beside the machine, The floor vibrates faintly from other lines still running nearby. Warm air comes from the motor housing. The smell of metal, lubricant, and heated plastic rises around you. Your gloves slip slightly as you open a guarded panel and check the sensor path. There it is, a small build-up near the sensor, barely visible, enough to confuse the reading and trigger the stop. Not dramatic, not broken in the way people imagine broken. Just one small point where the machine could no longer trust what it was seeing. You clean it, test it, reset the system, and wait. The screen clears. The line starts again slowly. Rollers turn, material feeds forward. The room exhales, no one cheers. In a factory, success often sounds like nothing going wrong. At level 3, you learned how to reject a flawed product. At level 4, you learn that keeping the factory alive means listening to machines before they become disasters. And once you understand the machines, they stop seeing you as just another worker. They start seeing you as someone who can keep the whole floor alive. Level 5, the team leader. At level 5, you are no longer responsible only for your own hands. Now you're responsible for other people's hands too. The shift begins before the line starts. You stand in front of a small group of workers under bright factory lights, holding a tablet with the day's assignment list. Some faces look tired. One worker keeps rubbing his wrist. A new hire stands near the back, trying to hide how nervous he is. The machines behind you are still quiet, but the pressure has already started. You assign stations, you check attendance, you remind everyone about safety rules, moisture control, defect reporting, and the batch target for the shift. The words come out of your mouth like instructions, but inside you remember being the person who had to receive them. That memory makes leadership harder, because now when the line starts, every mistake becomes partly yours. A new worker places a tray in the wrong orientation. You catch it before it reaches the next station, but the supervisor notices. An experienced operator complains that the target is too aggressive. Quality control flags a minor issue and asks your team to slow down. Maintenance warns that one machine should be watched closely. Production management wants the numbers back on schedule. Everyone needs something from you. The workers want protection from impossible pressure. The supervisors want output. Quality wants caution. Maintenance wants time. The factory wants all of it at once. You walk the floor with a radio clipped to your vest, listening to the layered sounds of the shift. Rollers turning, carts moving, scanners beeping, air systems blowing dry. Workers calling out small problems before they become large ones. You no longer hear the factory as one big noise. You hear it as separate signals, each one attached to a person. Then the new hire freezes near the line. A warning light blinks. He looks at the screen, then at you, unsure whether to call it or ignore it. You see the fear in his face, the same fear you felt when your scanner flashed red at level 1. For a moment you understand the weight of being watched from both directions. If you blame him, he may stop reporting problems. If you protect him too much, the rest of the team may think mistakes have no cost. So you step beside him, slow the station, and make him explain what he sees. Not to embarrass him, to teach him how to trust his eyes before the machine decides for him. The issue is small. The line recovers, but your role has changed. At level 4, you kept machines alive. At level 5, you learn that a factory also runs on fear, pride, fatigue, trust, and the quiet courage to speak up before something goes wrong. And once you begin leading people, the factory pulls you toward the deeper question: why do these problems keep happening in the first place? Level 6, the process engineer. At level 6, you leave the constant movement of the floor and step into the colder world of data. Your desk is not far from production, but it feels like a different factory. Through the glass, you can still see workers moving between stations, carts rolling past yellow lines, and warning lights blinking above machines. But in front of you, the factory becomes numbers. Coating thickness, drying temperature, line speed, defect rate, humidity trend, yield loss, downtime minutes. You are no longer asking only, who made the mistake? Now you ask, why did the system allow the mistake to happen? That question changes everything. A batch from the morning shift shows a rising number of edge defects. Quality control has flagged it. The team leader says the operators followed procedure. Maintenance says the machine is running within limits. Production wants the issue solved before the next large order enters the line. Everyone is partly right. That is what makes your job difficult. You walk back to the floor with a notebook, a tablet, and a quiet fear that the answer may not be obvious. The air near the coating line feels warm. The machine sounds normal. The operators look tense because they know you are not there for casual observation. You check the material path, compare samples, review sensor readings, and watch the same motion repeat again and again. The defect is small. The pattern is not. It appears more often at a certain speed during a certain material lot, after a certain temperature change. One number alone says nothing. Together they start telling a story. Back at your desk, you adjust the process window slightly. Not enough to gamble with the line, but enough to test what the data is showing you. You request a controlled trial. The supervisor does not like slowing down. Quality does not like uncertainty. The operators do not like being watched. But the factory cannot improve by pretending every problem belongs to one person. The trial runs. For several minutes, nothing changes. Then the defect rate begins to drop. Not to zero, factories rarely give you perfect answers, but enough to prove that the issue was not laziness, not carelessness, not one worker's failure. It was a weak point in the process. At level 5, you learned how to lead people through pressure. At level 6, you learn something colder. Sometimes the system creates the mistake, then waits for a person to take the blame. And once you can see the system behind the error, the factory gives you a larger territory to control. Level 7. The production manager. At level 7, the factory stops being a place where you solve one problem at a time. Now every problem arrives together. The shift begins in a meeting room with glass walls, whiteboards, tablets, and the dull glow of dashboards showing yesterday's numbers. Output is below target. Scrap is higher than expected. One line lost time during maintenance. Quality is still watching a sensitive batch. A customer shipment date is moving closer. You sit at the head of the table, but it does not feel like power. It feels like pressure with a better chair. Outside the room, the factory floor is already waking up. Operators put on gloves. Team leaders check staffing. Technicians review open issues. Quality inspectors prepare sampling plans. Everyone will soon look upward for decisions, and many of those decisions will come from you. Your job is to make the factory produce without pretending people and machines are unlimited. That sounds simple until the first call comes in. A line supervisor reports that one station is running slower than planned. Maintenance says a full repair would take 2 hours. Quality says the material can continue only if inspection frequency increases. Supply chain says the next batch of material is already staged and cannot wait too long. Your own manager wants the day's output recovered. Every option costs something. If you stop the line, you protect quality but lose production. If you keep running, you protect the schedule but increase risk. If you push the workers harder, the numbers may improve for one shift, but fatigue will show up later in mistakes, injuries, or silence when someone should speak up. You walk the floor and the factory feels different now. You no longer see only machines, you see consequences moving between people. A tired operator, a technician with grease on his sleeve, a quality inspector holding a report no one wants to read, a team leader trying to keep morale from breaking. At level 6, you learn that the system can create errors. At level 7, you learn that management is the art of choosing which damage is smallest before the damage chooses for you. So you make the call. Slow the line. Increase inspection. Give maintenance a short window to correct the issue. Move one experienced operator to support the weak station. Accept that today's number may not look perfect. No one is fully happy. That is how you know the decision was real. By the end of the shift, the factory has not won. It has survived. The shipment plan is tighter, the report will be uncomfortable, and tomorrow will begin with new pressure. But the batch is controlled. The team is still speaking honestly. The line is still alive. And now you understand that running production is not about making the machine faster. It is about keeping the entire system from lying to itself. But above the production floor, there is another level, where the question is no longer one line, one shift, or one batch, but the fate of the entire factory. Level 8. The plant manager. At level 8, you stand in an office with a wide window overlooking the factory floor. From here, the machines look smaller. The people look smaller too. That is the first thing that bothers you. You can still hear the distant rhythm of production through the glass, the low vibration of equipment, the soft alarm tones, the movement of carts, the air systems pushing dry, controlled air through sealed spaces. But the sound is muted now, like the factory has been placed behind a wall between your body and its consequences. You are the plant manager. You no longer manage one line, one shift, or one technical problem. You carry the whole building: production targets, safety performance, labor planning, energy use, quality audits, customer expectations, inventory levels, equipment investment, and the quiet fear that one hidden weakness could become tomorrow's crisis. Your morning begins with numbers: yield, scrap, downtime, shipment readiness, open safety actions, customer complaints, hiring gaps, maintenance backlog, cost per cell. Each number looks clean on the dashboard. But you know better now. Behind every number is a person, a machine, a decision, or a warning someone hoped would not become serious. Then the report lands on your desk. A major customer wants assurance that the next shipment will not be delayed. At the same time, quality is asking for extended review on a batch with borderline results. Production says the factory can still meet the schedule if you approve overtime. Human Resources warns that workers are already tired after several demanding weeks. Finance wants cost discipline. The pressure is no longer loud, it is polished. It arrives in emails, meetings, charts, and calm voices asking impossible questions politely. You walk down to the floor because staying behind the glass feels too easy. Workers nod when you pass. Some straighten their posture. Some avoid eye contact. You can feel the distance your title creates. You used to be one of the people waiting for decisions. Now you are the person whose decisions travel downward before anyone can question them. That is the burden of this level. If you approve speed without caution, the factory may pay later. If you delay too much, customers lose confidence and the plant loses trust. If you cut cost in the wrong place, the damage may not appear until a machine fails, a worker quits, or a batch goes wrong. At level 7, you learn to keep production from lying to itself. At level 8, you learn that an entire factory can also lie. With perfect reports, polished meetings, and numbers that hide exhaustion. So you make the harder decision. You approve a controlled delay, protect the quality review, limit overtime, and accept the uncomfortable call with the customer. The factory will not look perfect today, but it will remain honest. And above this building, beyond the loading docks and dry rooms, there is an even larger machine waiting. The supply chain that decides whether this factory has anything to build at all. Level 9. The supply chain executive. At level 9, the factory is no longer one building. It becomes a map. You sit in a regional operations office looking at screens that show supplier locations, shipping routes, port schedules, inventory levels, production forecasts, and risk alerts from places you may never visit. The EV battery factory you once walked through is still there, still humming, still full of people in gloves and safety shoes. But now it is only one node in a much larger system. Raw materials must arrive before the machines can run. Components must move before assembly can continue. Finished cells must leave before storage fills up. Every truck, container, warehouse, supplier, and customs delay becomes part of your job. At level 8, you worried about the truth inside one factory. At level 9, you learn that a factory can do everything right and still be trapped by something happening thousands of miles away. A supplier reports a delay. A shipment that should have arrived this week may arrive late. The plant has enough inventory for now, but not enough to absorb every possible problem. Production wants certainty. Finance wants lower inventory. Customers want delivery dates. Procurement wants time to negotiate. The factory floor wants materials to appear as if the world outside does not exist. But the world outside is the machine now. You study the options, expedite by air and raise costs, reroute through another port and risk congestion, shift material between plants and create pressure somewhere else, slow one production schedule to protect another. Every choice solves one problem by moving the burden to a different part of the system. The most uncomfortable part is how clean the decision looks on a screen. A few clicks, a revised forecast, a new shipment plan, a changed allocation. But you know what those changes mean below. A team leader may have to explain overtime. A production manager may lose a buffer. A plant manager may take a difficult call. A worker at the bottom may wonder why the line suddenly speeds up or slows down without ever knowing your name. That is the strange power of supply chain leadership. You affect people you will never meet. You move pressure across borders, time zones, warehouses, and factory floors. You do not hear the scanners beep. You do not smell the metal, cardboard, and machine oil. You do not feel the dry air in your throat. But every decision you make reaches someone who does, so you choose the plan that protects the most critical production without pretending the cost disappears. You approve a partial reroute, raise the risk flag early, warn the plant before the shortage becomes a surprise, and accept that another region will have to adjust. Nobody calls it heroic. In supply chain, success often means the crisis becomes smaller before most people know it existed. At level 9, you understand that the battery factory is not just a factory. It is a living network of mines, refineries, suppliers, ships, ports, warehouses, trucks, workers, engineers, managers, and customers, all moving under pressure. And above even this network, there is one final level, the place where people do not just manage the system, but decide what the system is for. Level 10, the corporate decision maker. At level 10, you are no longer inside the battery factory. You are in a glass meeting room high above a city, looking at a wall-sized screen filled with markets, forecasts, factory capacity, raw material costs, vehicle demand, regional regulations, and investment plans. The factory where you began is still part of the system, but now it appears as a line on a report, a production target, a risk category, a cost center, a strategic asset. That is what frightens you most. From this height, everything can look clean. The workers become headcount. The machines become capacity. The defects become yield loss. The overtime becomes labor cost. The delays become supply risk. The batteries become units. The future becomes a quarterly decision. You sit with executives, finance leaders, legal teams, operations directors, and brand strategists. The question on the table sounds simple. Should the company expand production faster, hold steady, or shift investment to another region? But you know what that question really means. If you expand too fast, the factory floor may be pushed beyond what people and processes can safely handle. If you hold back, competitors may move ahead and the plants below you may lose momentum. If you shift production elsewhere, one community gains work while another starts wondering what will happen to its future. At level 1, you were afraid of placing one pallet in the wrong zone. Now you are afraid of placing an entire company in the wrong direction. The room is quiet except for voices discussing margins, timelines, customer commitments, and market share. No one sounds cruel. That is the uncomfortable truth. Most decisions at the top are not made by villains. They are made by people using clean language to control messy consequences. You look at the screen and remember the dry air in your throat, the red scanner warning, the operator listening for a strange vibration, the inspector flagging a tiny defect, the technician kneeling beside a stopped machine, the team leader protecting a nervous new hire, the engineer proving the system was at fault, the production manager choosing the smallest damage, the plant manager refusing to let polished numbers hide exhaustion, and the supply chain team moving pressure across the world, All of that lives inside the decision now. So when your turn comes, you do not ask only how fast the company can grow. You ask what the system can carry without breaking, and the answer will not satisfy everyone. It never does. Growth needs speed. Safety needs patience. Investors want confidence. Customers want supply. Workers need a system that does not spend their bodies faster than it repairs its own weaknesses. You approve expansion, but not blindly. You tie it to process stability, training capacity, quality safeguards, supplier resilience, and honest reporting from the plants. You accept slower growth than some people wanted, because you know what happens when pressure becomes invisible. At the highest level, power does not feel like freedom, it feels like distance. You no longer hear the machines, but you are responsible for the speed at which they run. You no longer touch the materials, but you decide how much the world will demand from the hands that do. You no longer stand under the factory lights, but your decisions still fall on everyone below them. You started by trying to survive the machine. Now you are one of the people deciding how fast it should run. You began at the loading side of an EV battery factory, holding a scanner in your hand, afraid of moving one pallet to the wrong place. You did not understand the whole system then. You only knew the weight of the boxes, the warning labels on the containers, the sound of forklifts on polished concrete, and the fear of making a mistake before anyone even knew your name. Then you climbed. You stood beside the line and learned that machines do not slow down for human doubt. You entered quality control and learned that saying no can be harder than keeping the product moving. You repaired machines under pressure, led workers who still remembered when you were one of them, studied data that revealed the hidden weaknesses of the process, and managed production decisions where every option carried a cost. Higher up, the factory became quieter. The noise turned into reports. The people became numbers. The machines became capacity. The pressure moved from your body into your decisions. At the top, you no longer touched the battery cell at all, but every choice you made could still travel down through the plant, across suppliers, into shipments, and finally into the electric vehicles people drive, without ever thinking about the system behind them. That is the hidden truth of production. A battery is never just a battery. It is labor, chemistry, machinery, quality, logistics, risk, money, and power, compressed into something small enough to fit inside a vehicle, but large enough to shape entire industries. And behind every clean product the world celebrates, there is a ladder of pressure most people never see. If you want to see another hidden system from the bottom to the top, comment which factory, brand, or global supply chain we should enter next. And if this journey changed the way you look at the products around you, subscribe for more stories from inside every level.